Hey, everybody, this is Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. Welcome on board. It is Tuesday, and that means it's time for So Real Suniel from So Real Sports Talk TV to join me. How you doing, Suniel? I know you got some business to take care of today.
Yeah, man, I'm traveling for work, but couldn't, man. We've been pushing this show around. It hasn't been as consistent as we like it, but I always enjoy the chance to talk with you about the 49ers. So glad you were able to squeeze me in, man.
No, I'm the one that should be glad because I'm the one that's always having to change things around because of training camp and the busy stuff that I've got going on outside of covering the 49ers and everything else. So I appreciate you. If I could learn how to talk, it'd be way better this show. I appreciate you for making the time to do this today and being able to fit it in. Let's get into it. A little bit of news yesterday and a little bit more.
A little bit, right?
A little bit yesterday, a little bit more today. I think pretty much everybody had Jimmy Garoppolo sailing off into the sunset at this time, today, about a week ago. And instead, he's a member of the 49ers, going to make $7 million plus possible incentives if he depending on how much he plays. So what are your thoughts on Jimmy Garoppolo back to the 49ers?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think one thing we have to say is Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, they're not liars. And what I mean by that is they kind of always said that this was going to be a possibility. They were going to trade, but they weren't going to let Jimmy go for nothing, right? And I do think it went up just based off of the press conference that they did today. It did seem like they were willing to cut him because at $25 million, they weren't going to be willing to keep him because they've assured. I mean, they're pretty consistent. He's the backup. I don't think they realized that Jimmy would be open to taking such a severe pay cut, being open to just being the backup, and yeah, I mean, the thing about it, Jack, is the narrative about Jimmy was at 25 million, 27 million, whatever his contract were any of those years, you're like, that's too much for the level of play. But at 12 million, he's really, really good for, bang for your buck. Well, at 6.5 million, you're talking about, I think you have obviously the best backup in the league. A guy that at 6.5 million, he's better on your team than not on your team, right? Especially because, we know all of the woes. We know the Achilles heel for the 49ers about whether or not they're competitive is their quarterback room. That's basically been it. If they don't have a starting level quarterback there, they're not very good. If they have a starting level quarterback there, they're very good, right? So I think that secures that there will always be a starting level quarterback there. It's just going to be difficult, Jack, because we haven't seen it work, right? We haven't seen this scenario work. We've seen it, in New England twice, right? With Bledsoe and Tom Brady initially, and they had to ship Bledsoe off. We've seen it with New England with Tom Brady and Jimmy. They shipped Jimmy off, and then most recently we saw it with Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, and we saw that that didn't work out very well as well. So I guess the biggest thing for me is that Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, they are putting all their eggs in the basket that they've created a culture that could withstand this, because anybody's naive to think that this isn't going to cast like a gray cloud over the team, because we know what the media is like. Any chance they get, they're going to create the story and they're going to ask the question. And we thought we were finally going to be in a year where there was no quarterback controversy, drama, all that kind of stuff. Well, we know now that's not going to be the case, Jack. So that's I guess my overall thoughts about everything.
Yeah, you went in a lot of different directions with that. So I'm gonna give my 2 cents on a lot of those things, because a lot of mine kind of run a little contrary to yours in some ways, maybe. I mean, I agree with you that having Jimmy Garoppolo on this roster is the best case scenario when it comes to the level of play that you now have out of your backup quarterback. And let's make no mistake about it, Jimmy Garoppolo is the backup quarterback to Trey Lance, and that was made clear today by Kyle Shanahan. I think one thing about this whole process that everybody needs to understand is we've all spent, I shouldn't say all of us, because I've pretty much been listening to them for about the last year. I haven't tried to really stray too much from what they've been saying. I've been pretty much buying what they've been selling. And if you really listen to what Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have said about the quarterback situation from the time that Trey Lance was drafted till now, everything that they've said has worked out in the way that they've said it's worked out. Now, obviously, some of that is because they know how to word things so that they kind of it can go in multiple different directions, right? So that's part of it. But I will say this, as far as we haven't seen it work out, we saw it work out last year. The 49ers were one step away from going to the Super Bowl with this situation. And this was a situation that myself included, prior to the season starting, said that I was worried that it wouldn't work out because Jimmy Garoppolo and what he has in the locker room. And Trey Lance would, be the guy. But I really think that they have a strong enough core group in that locker room that they can withstand all of the discussion. Because if you just look at the way that it's been handled from day one, like Kyle Shanahan was asked today, how was this? I don't know if he said, is it fair to Trey Lance? I don't know exactly how it was phrased. It sounded like Mike Florio asking the question. It was something to do with all the noise that's going to be around this team now with Jimmy Garoppolo there. And Kyle Shanahan's answer was spot on. It's like, what do you mean? Were you not paying it? I'm paraphrasing here. Mm-hmm. It's like, what do you mean? Were you not paying attention to last season? Were you not paying attention to what the first half of last season was like? Every time I stood up at the podium after a loss, the first question, either right after the game or on the Monday press conference, was always about the quarterback and would Trey Lance be taking over? It was constant. And that's not going to change. The noise that the 49ers are going to deal with now is the same noise as what they had last year. The only difference is it's coming from the other side of the 49ers fan base and content creator room. It's not coming it's not like it's going to be any different. It's just going to be coming from other people, because the Trey Lance fans who kept asking why Jimmy Garoppolo was the starter, those guys are going to be the ones that are going to be defending Trey Lance now. And all the Jimmy Garoppolo fans who were, the quiet ones last year, they're going to be it's just a reversal. And it's going to be the same thing. And you can see it. We talked before we came on here about my tweet with the stats for Trey Lance for training camp and preseason. Those kind of tweets, or actually not even that one, the one that I sent out yesterday saying the 49ers, not even the 49ers, a team, doesn't matter how good the roster is, you're only as good as your quarterback, or the quarterback needs to make plays, whatever. I wasn't even being specific to the 49ers with that tweet. It was something that I had seen the stats, the rankings of the 49ers roster minus quarterbacks. And then for me, I thought back to Eli Manning, Jeff Hostetler, the guy, what was his name? Trent Dilfer, Brad Johnson, those kind of quarterbacks that won Super Bowls on teams that had really good rosters, but those guys all made a play at some point deep in the playoffs to help their teams win those games.
Right.
And that thing, you could tell who the people were that were Trey Lance fans and the people who were Jimmy Garoppolo fans, because the Trey Lance fans hated it. The Jimmy Garoppolo fans loved it. And I was just like, you guys don't even get it. And the only guy that got it was Swansong.
Yeah. But, I'm not too worried about the media and the fans, because that's going to be whatever, right? The biggest thing is in the locker room, right? Because it's one thing to know kind of the pecking order, like as far as Jimmy, we've gone to a Super Bowl with Jimmy, now an NFC Championship game, and then we have this guy that still is unproven and all that kind of stuff. So it's easy to get behind Jimmy the starter and Trey being the backup and everybody being okay with that. Now it's about, okay, well, it's reversed now, right? Where Jimmy is now the guy that a lot of these players have won with, and he's on the bench. So it's not like, hopefully the beginning of this, the way the schedule works out, obviously winning solves everything, Jack. But my question is going to be, if the team is starting to lose, if the offense is sputtering, right? And Trey is at the helm, what is the team going to do? Because, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know. I don't remember this coming up through the season, but somebody tweeted out that it was the veterans on the team and the leadership of the team that went to Shanahan and said, we need to stop doing this 2-quarterback thing, because it's like causing some kind of, like, it's not giving us a chance to win. And then after that, you saw that they stopped going with that 2-quarterback system that Shanahan was doing in the beginning. I don't know if that's true or not, but if that is true, then that's where I'm really wondering, like, hopefully it doesn't go to that point and Trey could just play well and well enough to where this team could just continuously win. But that's probably naivete. And to be honest, from the preseason, you can see that, Trey is going to have some inconsistent moments. So how much is the team going to support him behind that, knowing that there's a guy like Jimmy on there? That's what I'm more concerned about, at least wondering, because I don't know. I want to believe, and I do believe this team has a very great culture. I think everybody is, wanting the best for each other on the team. But that's the thing that's going to be questioned, because I think it's easier to go the opposite way, where we're backing Jimmy and, Trey just needs to understand he's young and unproven, to the opposite, where the backup is the proven guy and the starter isn't. So I think Trey, it does put a little pressure on Trey, or a lot of pressure on Trey, to go out there and at least be consistent with this play in a way that could keep this team, or give this team a chance to win in every game.
Yeah, I want to know who it was that said that the players went in and made that comment to the coach that they need to stop it. It's because if you just go through, and I'm not putting this on you, I don't know who put it out there. I had somebody who I know does mentioned that to me in a DM at one point, about that there was some unrest, and I said there might be, but if you just go through and just look at the way down last year, at what point did the players go and say we can't do this back and forth? Because Trey Lance played a handful of snaps in the season opener. He came in against Green Bay, and I think he played like 3 or 4 snaps. It wasn't very many. He scored the touchdown. I think he came in for maybe a couple of the ones. It wasn't very many snaps that week. And then he got into the game in the second half against Seattle because Jimmy Garoppolo was hurt. Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't play the following week, so Trey Lance played then. So from week 5 on, he didn't play. Did they go to him after week 5 after he made a start? You know what I'm saying?
It makes sense. And like I said, it never, I think that would have been a big story if it was true, right? So that's why I'm saying it was a little bit confusing to me, but it is out there floating around, and who knows if somebody's just making it up or whatnot.
No, it's out there.
It's just like, if that if it is true, that's where it's like, okay, well, what happens now if it's the opposite, right?
Here's the thing. From the beginning of last season, there was never a time when he said that Jimmy Garoppolo was the starting quarterback, but I think it was pretty much known by everybody that Jimmy Garoppolo was going to be the starting quarterback once week 1 hit. And once he started week 1, that he was going to be the starter for the season. It wasn't. Here's the thing when it comes to Kyle Shanahan. He's not Mike Singletary. He knows how to coach. And he understands that if you take your starter out just to take him out, and then you're going to put somebody else in, and you're going to go back and forth with your quarterbacks, you're doomed. And so that's why last year Trey Lance never started a game when Jimmy Garoppolo was healthy. Trey Lance never had extended run in any game when Jimmy Garoppolo was healthy. Kyle Shanahan stated last year that Jimmy Garoppolo was his quarterback, over and over as the season wore on. And he never wavered on that. And he even went back to him every time he was healthy, he played. And I think that's what we're going to see this season. I think you're going to see Trey Lance is the guy. They've been very open that Trey Lance is the guy. The only way Jimmy Garoppolo gets into a game is if Trey Lance gets hurt. And I don't think it, and I don't even think it means like last year, the only time that Shanahan has said that he was thinking about going to Trey was if they had lost to the Rams. What happens if you lose on Monday night to the Rams? Right? You're now 3-6 and you're pretty much done with the season. And once you're done with the season, let's get the rookie in there and let's go in that direction because that's the future. Jimmy Garoppolo is not the future of the 49ers. Trey Lance is the future of the 49ers. If they get in that same situation this year where the team is done, he's not going to all of a sudden bench Trey Lance for Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't see a scenario where he's going to make the move unless he's decided that Trey Lance is never going to be his quarterback.
That's what I'm saying, Jack. That the situation is a little bit different because at that point he's already seen success with Jimmy, right? Mm-hmm. And that same success he's seen with Jimmy, he hasn't necessarily seen success with Trey. And at the end of the day, Kyle Shanahan is still a coach that's looking to be extremely competitive in this year. We're going to get to see what the makeup of Kyle Shanahan is and how secure he feels in his job. Mm-hmm. Because if this does turn into a season where there's a moment where it could be over in the regular season, Jack, that is going to be a big thing that Kyle Shanahan is going to have to answer for, because the roster isn't one that should be in a situation where somewhere middle of the season they could completely be out of it. The only reason that's going to be the case is if Trey Lance isn't good enough. Now, I don't think that Trey Lance isn't good enough. I think he'll be fine. But it does set up this situation and this scenario where what if it does get to a point where we're teetering on a very important 3-game stretch where if they win, they have a chance to make the playoffs. But if they lose, they could completely be out of the playoffs. Does Shanahan and let's say the only reason they're in that situation is because it's been a shaky however many games before that with Trey starting. Does Shanahan rock out and trust Trey in that 3-game stretch, or does he go back to somebody who he's actually seen, consistency with as far as winning games? That's the question, right? We don't know what it's going to be. He's never been in that situation. We've never seen him in that situation. He's never had a chance to be in that situation. Well, now that chance is real, right? Let's say we're 8 games into the season. They're 4-4, right? And the Rams are somewhere, and there's 7 teams in the NFC that have winning records, and they're going into that stretch where it's a really difficult stretch. Chargers, all that kind of, right? Does he still stick with Trey, or does he go with Jimmy, who he knows that he's won with? I don't know. I would hope that I agree with you. I think that Shanahan's pretty dug into his ways, and he's confident enough and stubborn enough to just go with what he thinks the game plan is. But we've never seen him with this choice to make, right? It's never been a discussion as far as who the better option is. Last year, Jimmy was the better option throughout. There was never a point where Trey Lance was a better option than Jimmy because Trey hasn't played enough football to prove that. However, that isn't going to be the case this year because we have seen Jimmy have success with Kyle Shanahan. We have seen Kyle Shanahan win a lot with Jimmy. So there may be a point where the question is Jimmy a better option than Trey? Let's hope it doesn't get to that point, Jack, but we are in a situation where that's possible now.
I think it's always been possible. And Kyle, because that's also kind of how Kyle Shanahan answered that question, was the most everybody loves the backup. They don't even have to have seen him play, and they love him.
Mhm.
Do you remember when when Mike Singletary was the head coach? Do you remember all the people in the stands when Alex Smith was struggling?
Yeah, but
It's the same
there's a
thing.
big difference between when Kyle Shanahan is structured, right? Because I don't think anybody ever thought that Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard were better than Jimmy, right? I don't think there was ever a calling where, because Jimmy was winning, first of all, and two, like the level of play behind these guys hasn't been there. What I'm saying is we haven't been in a situation. The closest was last year, right? Where there was some struggles and people were saying maybe Trey would be better. But both you and I were coming on these shows and being like, nah, it's not time to start Trey. Like at this point, you go with it. I was actually somebody who wanted them to start Trey from the beginning of the season, but when he chose Jimmy, I was like, you got to rock out with Jimmy at this point. Like there's no point going back and forth. I believe the same way as you're saying. If you're saying it's Trey, you got to go with Trey the whole season. But what I am saying is this is the first chance where Kyle Shanahan, if there is a struggle, right, and if there is a chance for the season to go far left and like it could be over, he's never had a quarterback that's on the bench that's been on in a Super Bowl with him, that's been in an NFC Championship game with him. You know what I mean? That's where it's different, right? Where I understand what you're saying. Everybody loves the backup, but that's in theory. There's never been a backup that has taken you to a Super Bowl. There's never been a backup that just last year you were in an NFC Championship game with. It's different from the idea of this backup could get you better versus hard, cold facts that this backup has taken you there, right? So that's where I think it's different.
No, I get you, and I understand the question. I don't think the question was a bad one, and I don't think it's. I find it if the 49ers get to the point where we're having this discussion, it's a failure, right? And so it won't really matter at that point. I mean, if they get to the point where he's thinking about making that move to Jimmy Garoppolo, something's off the it's already gone. The season's already gone off the rails. So
right,
from that standpoint. Really quick, I'm going to answer this super chat really fast just because I'm an old guy, so I remember it. Moses wanted to know, Jack, it's very vague, but refresh my memory. What caused Seifert to turn on Steve Young, and was it so much controversy with Montana fans? No, I mean, I don't know if it was a controversy with Montana. Turn to Steve Young. Okay. What caused Seifert to turn to Steve Young? Thank you. I misread it the first time. The reason that Seifert turned to Steve Young was because Joe Montana was hurt and couldn't play. That's the reason. When Seifert took over the team in '89, he said, I'm not having a quarterback controversy. Joe Montana's my quarterback. Joe Montana was his quarterback in '89 and '90. He got hurt in the NFC Championship game, got hurt in training camp leading into '91. Steve Young took over, and Young was the quarterback from that point forward, and Montana was the guy on the outside. He never did the back and the forth stuff. So he did a really good job of it in that standpoint. Was it a controversy with the Montana fans? Of course it was a controversy with the Montana fans. They all wanted Steve Young. To this day, if you say that I could put a tweet out right now and say that the 49ers would have won the Super Bowl in 1993 or beat the Cowboys in 1993 if Joe Montana had been the quarterback, and I'll get about tons of likes. And I'll have people, if I say the opposite, people will tell me that I'm full of baloney, and some people will like it. I mean, it just goes back and forth. Mm-hmm. So how does this relate to the current 49ers situation? I just think that, again, just listening to everything that Kyle Shanahan has said and everything the 49ers have said and done, this is Trey Lance's team, and they're gonna write. We'll see. You could be right, and I could be wrong. I just don't think we're gonna see Jimmy Garoppolo start a game unless Trey Lance is hurt.
Yeah, and I hope so. And I believe in Trey, and I think he'll be fine. It's just it's opening up that this is a possibility. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, that's cool. No, that's good, and it's fine for us to disagree, and we're not totally disagreeing. I think we both think that that's a possible solution. You had said a lot of things that I wish I had been writing them down because I
sorry, I did go a little long-winded.
No, but it's good. It's good, and it's going to be a fun season. It's going to be fun to see how it plays out because, quite frankly, I think that the 49ers, when that list came out the other day, putting the 49ers roster as the best minus the quarterbacks, right now the 49ers have the best quarterback room in the NFL as far as I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, you would say maybe quarterbacks that are better than the quarterbacks that the 49ers have might have an upper hand, right? Would you like Justin Herbert, you know, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, even if their backup is worse than Jimmy, their top level of quarterback could be better than, what the 49ers have combined. But I understand what you're saying. As far as the depth, the 49ers have the deepest quarterback group.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You can say that, like the Chargers with Justin Herbert, because he's so good, and whoever, I don't even know who their backup is. That quarterback room is. I would still put the 400. I put the 1 and 2 combined with Garoppolo and Lance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Up there with anybody, But
they're
when it
deeper.
comes to
they're the deepest quarterback room for sure. They're the only roster that has bona fide 2 starting quarterbacks in the room.
Right.
So
and it's funny, and they even mentioned it today, that they kind of had always had this kind of be something on the back burner, but they never thought Garoppolo would agree to it and what have you. You should remind that to Jesse the next time you talk to him. Ask him how many times he was ready to probably reach through the screen and strangle me last year as the season was wearing on. And I said, hey, Jimmy Garoppolo could be coming back. Don't completely throw that out there yet. The 49ers could restructure his deal. They could bring him back on a lower cost thing. You never know. Said, and I know that in his, I love Jesse, and I'm sure he was like, this guy doing it again, right? He's like, oh, come on, Jack, you're killing me. But, and it worked out that way. I agree. I never thought that Jimmy Garoppolo would agree to it. That was the whole thing. I just
especially with how low of a cut he took, right? And to just admit, or at least be okay with being the backup. It just shows I think Jimmy was humbled this offseason a little bit, right? He thought maybe he was more sought after than he did. And it makes sense why they're in this situation. Like, they exhausted every opportunity to keep Jimmy on the contract that he was in, try to get a team wanting him to trade for him and all that kind of stuff. Reality is the market for Jimmy wasn't as big as he thought it would be. And I think a lot of people thought it would be. So I think it was a humbling situation for Jimmy. No starting caliber quarterback that was in the NFC Championship game just last year now wants to say they're worth $20 million less than what they were worth, and have to sit on the bench and accept that, right? Because he could clearly just get cut and go be a free agent and try to sign something elsewhere. And they gave him all the opportunity to check with other teams and see if there's anything there. This is clearly Jimmy understanding that this is the best opportunity for him, being a $6.5 million quarterback behind a first-year starter. And that's a big drop-off from what I think people thought Jimmy Garoppolo was and his status in the league. So,
no, I think it's definitely a humbling experience for Jimmy Garoppolo in some ways, and it works to the Niners' favor. So, whether Garoppolo is actually humbled or not, it was good for the 49ers. That's how it worked out, and I think I agree with you. I do think that there was that. If there was somebody that wanted to pay him more money, he would have gone there, I think. And the other part of it, when you look at it, the way that this deal is set up, the trade option is much more available if there's a team that he wants to go to that wants him. And if he does make those starts, he's going to start making a lot more money as a result. So it's set up well for him on that, and we'll see how it plays out.
You could tell that it's probably Jimmy saving face a little bit. You got to give me a trade, a no trade clause, right? He's like, he's getting railed on every single other aspect of this contract, right? But they're like, give me that no trade clause, so at least I can go to a team that I want to go to. Which, in my estimation, is going to be any team that opens up with the starting position, right? It could be what's probably like the worst team in the league right now. I don't even know. It's too hard to say, but let's say Chicago Bears, right? Nobody really thinks they're going too well. God forbid Justin Fields gets injured. and all of a sudden they're willing to trade for a starting quarterback. I'm sure Jimmy will be all of a sudden, yeah, that's a team I want to go to just for the ability to start somewhere, right? So I don't think that. I think a lot of people are looking at this no trade clause as it's going to be something that deters the 49ers from trading. I personally think it was a way for Jimmy to save some face, to feel like he has some control. But in all actuality, any team that opens up that gives him an opportunity to be a starter, that's going to be a team he's willing to get traded to.
Yeah, no, it all works out. It works out really well for everybody in this situation. And you keep Garoppolo, you cut $20 million off of your cap, voila, you're set, you're ready to go. So good stuff all around. Some other news today, the 49ers made a bunch of cuts and they're down to 53. Right. Was there anything that surprised you, jumped out?
Well, a few things. Actually, there's three main things that stood out to me. One was them actually cutting guys they drafted this year. So Tariq Castro-Fields, with props to you, because you told me during rookie camp that he was probably a guy that wasn't going to make the roster, or had an option of not making the roster because of the way you saw him play. It's kind of funny because I forget which journalist came out and said he was like the best 6th round pick the 49ers have ever made, and then he doesn't even make the team, right? But I think he was playing a little bit better. For him to get cut, I think was a big deal. The other thing was Kamiko Toure getting cut. I thought he played well enough to make a roster spot, so that was interesting to me. And then the other thing was that they actually carried another running back, right? So instead of just the 4 running backs and 5th being Juszczyk, they carried 5 with Juszczyk, and Jordan Mason made the team, which I'm pretty excited about. I think he's a change of pace guy that they needed, and their running back room is extremely young. Outside of Jeff Wilson, everybody there is a 2nd year or 1st year player. I think that Kyle Shanahan is going to run the ball a lot this year, and having a healthy stable of running backs is important to them. I don't think they want to go through what they went through last year. And I think those were the 3 biggest things that stood out to me. Jack, what about for you?
For me, I think when I look at this one, I look at the running back room. I'm very pleased to see that Jordan Mason made this roster. I thought that Jordan Mason was worthy of making this roster, going back to to OTAs and so on and so forth. Just the way that he ran the ball, his ability, the stuff that he did with the ball in terms of as a receiver. We saw him in training camp continue to do that, and then you all got to see him during the preseason games. And this is a guy who, Jordan Mason is exactly what you want if you're he's old school Kyle Shanahan running back. He's downhill, one cut, go. Attack the defense upfield all the time, and I think it's just a fantastic move that they're able to keep him. We'll see what happens. JaMycal Hasty, and I feel bad for him because I thought that he had a solid training camp as well. I thought that
somebody in the chat section said rumors are he's going to be signing with Miami here pretty quickly. So I don't know.
He might. Make sense. I mean, it makes sense for JaMycal Hasty to end up with Mike McDaniel. They know each other very well. Why not get Hasty and Mostert together again out there? That might be what happens. But we'll see what happens with Trey Sermon. We'll see what happens with Ty Davis-Price. I think the 3 best running backs that are on the 49ers roster right now are Elijah Mitchell, Jeff Wilson Jr., and Jordan Mason. The other 2. Those guys are works in progress. We'll see. Maybe they'll turn it around. Maybe they're going to surprise. They're younger players too, and maybe they'll surprise us. We'll see. So the running back keeping only 5 receivers, going with 3 tight ends. Only 9 defensive linemen. The interesting piece to this is remember they had to keep a couple guys that were injured on their roster. So Jimmy Ward going to be will be going on IR tomorrow. Curtis Robinson, who they kept 6 linebackers. That's another surprise. They kept the 6th linebacker. Not sure exactly why they did that. There's got to be some kind of a roster reasoning behind it. Maybe they felt like he'd get picked up by somebody else otherwise right now if they exposed him. So once Ward and Robinson go on IR, they're going to add another defensive lineman. It's supposed to be Jordan Willis, which makes sense.
My guy.
Yeah, and I thought that was, when at the end of the day, when I put out my last mock 53-man roster, I put him on it over Kerry Hyder because I thought Kamoku Trey would be on there. I thought Trey was probably around like number 9, right? And then you had your last two guys on the roster being Hyder and Willis. And Willis, I had Willis making it over Hyder because of his special teams play. But again, this whole thing goes back to having versatility and having guys that can do multiple things, and I think that's why you see and also at tight end too. I'm sorry, they're going to add a 4th tight end. They're going to bring Tyler Croft back tomorrow. That's according to Nick Wagner of ESPN.
Yeah, I wonder what they're going to do with Dante Johnson too, because I think he's a guy that they're going to try to bring back or at least put on the practice squad because he's somebody who I think is a Swiss Army knife for them in the secondary that has earned his spot. The one question I did have for you is
very good point.
Jaquiski Tartt got cut from the Eagles.
Yes.
What are the chances of the 49ers, especially with Ward out, them bringing him back into the mix?
I think that's a great move. But my question is, does Jaquiski Tartt want the 49ers? And I don't think he does. That's my
So he's with the Jets or Miami here pretty soon?
Yeah, probably. One of those two, I would think. I think, you made a really good point about with Dante Johnson and so forth. So that's where the 16-man practice squad comes in, because you can bring those guys on the practice squad, bring them up and down during the season. There's Dante Johnson for you. I think that's where he lands. That's where he was last year for most of the season.
Yeah.
He was on the practice squad.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably Tariq Castro-Fields. Was there anything that didn't surprise you?
I wasn't surprised by them only taking 5 wide receivers. I think that I think Marcus Johnson had a chance because of special teams, but they brought in so many specialists through special teams that just having another receiver just for special teams wasn't really necessary, right? They have, they just put such an emphasis on special teams. They have a lot of gunners and all that kind of stuff now. Wasn't too surprised about the 5 receivers because I did think that they were going to have to add more to the running back room, and I thought possibly the DBs, the cornerbacks as well. So I think that, and then obviously the other thing was them cutting Nate Sudfeld just because they guaranteed him $2 million. I think that kind of changes everything now from moving forward. Is like, just because they have a guaranteed contract doesn't mean that they're guaranteed a spot, right? So that's going to be interesting moving forward. But that was something that did surprise me. You asked what didn't surprise me. It was more surprises than anything. I didn't think Justin School was going to get cut. He's been somebody who always seems to make the roster that they seem to be high on. I do have questions. What do you think? I know, Jack, you're one of the guys like me that has been pretty consistent in that we don't think the offensive line is going to be an issue. They always seem to win as long as they have a starting caliber quarterback out there. Do you still feel that way, seeing the struggles of the offensive line through the preseason?
Yeah, and the reason I feel that way is because Trent Williams is going to be on the field once the regular season starts, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that Mike McGlinchey will be out there as well. The what I've been saying, the way that I would say it is that if the 49ers have either one of those two on the field, whether it is McGlinchey or Williams, the offensive line will be okay, because once you have one guy that you kind of have it solid, you can kind of work away from him, right? Kind of like you do in the secondary. If you have one really good corner, you can kind of let him sit over there and help the other ones out. I think it's similar with the 49ers. You can't do it. There's a reason why the 49ers were so bad against the team that they just went up against, because If you watched, I was not. I thought that Jalen Moore struggled quite a bit. I felt like
He
Colton
was
McKivitz
terrible.
struggled quite a bit. Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And after the first quarter, when those two guys got out, and then it was Mills and when it was Mills and School, at that point it's like almost non-functional. I mean, those guys were just so bad. And I
Yeah.
think also part of it too is I think some of the what looked like offensive line struggles in that game was attributed to the quarterback. I think that was a little bit of both, and I've taken a lot of heat for that over the last week. But uh, I don't know. There's people smarter than me who played quarterback in the NFL that have said the same things that I do in terms of kind of a couple, at least one, two of the plays that we saw take place.
Yeah, and I do think the same thing. I'm still okay because I think a lot of the struggles have been guys that aren't going to be starting at those positions. Like you said, I
Mhm.
think Jalen Moore didn't just struggle. I think he was terrible. That was the worst game I've ever seen him play. Um, Clearly, left tackle is not a position for him. They need to keep him at a guard if he ever sees the field because that left tackle position he did not play well at. I do have a question because it does look like maybe McGlinchey might not be starting immediately. It still seems like the injury is lingering. Who do you feel most comfortable at right tackle?
McGlinchey.
Well,
If McGlinchey,
if
if
McGlinchey can't play,
if McGlinchey can't play, then it's McKivitz.
well, okay, because he's been up and down, right? So, but we've won games with him on the field, right? So important games. Like he played left tackle for in the Rams game that was a must win to get into the playoffs, right? So, you know, serviceable, but obviously not the long term solution.
And if McKivitz is in there, you're going to see play like this, right?
Right.
You're going to see him have some good snaps, and so those will be blown up on Twitter. Everybody's going to want to show you how good he was, and then there's going to be, the plays that are bad plays where he's just like they were in Week 18. If you go back and watch Week 18, he struggled a lot in the first half of that game, and he got better as the game went on. But I think part of that's because they got away from forcing him to do too much.
Right.
Out there on the on the island that is left tackle. So McKivitz will be okay. I think McKivitz is a slight decline from what they had from in Tom Compton when it comes to pass protection. I don't think there's much there of a decrease when it comes to run blocking. But you just need if Trent Williams is healthy, they're fine. If that's my default. If it's one or the other of those guys are healthy, they'll be okay. If they're both out, then they should run the ball 50 times.
And if they're both healthy, then I think this offensive line is going to be a lot better than people expect because I do think that both of those guys make the other three, even though they don't have a lot of experience. I think that they've held up enough for me to believe that they could still be a competent offensive line. It's really been the issues at those tackle positions with the backup that has made the offensive line look so weak.
Yeah, and it's also you're right. It is that whole thing because that showed up in training camp when the offensive line struggled early on, and then all of a sudden they looked really good, and they looked really good because Trent Williams and Mike McGlinchey were on the field again. So, we haven't seen what the offensive line is going to look like in a game. I've seen a little bit of it at training camp, but we also didn't. We missed McGlinchey for 2 weeks, and we didn't see him. So I think they're going to be okay. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're going to be top 10, but I think they have enough to be okay. And Trey Lance will make them look better in terms of less sacks because he can move, I think, unless he keeps holding on to the ball for too long. And then it's going to be a problem.
And I think the schemes will start being less vanilla, and we still have Kyle Shanahan designing these plays. So he's made Jimmy Garoppolo look like a guy that was going to be worth a first-round draft pick to many people, and instead he ended up taking a $20 million pay cut and being the backup for the team. So that's how good Kyle Shanahan is. We still have him calling the play, so we should be all right.
Yeah, I know you're a supporter of Kyle Shanahan, and I will say that I still will get on him at times about play decisions or like game management decisions. But going back to our discussion on Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo, and also just the roster as a whole. I came to appreciate the job that he did last year. Um, he deserves a lot of praise for how well of a job he did to keep that team going. Obviously, his players have to make the plays. Obviously, he had some issues early on, but he was able to figure out a way to keep the ship together and get everybody to continue to buy in. And when everybody was ready to jump off after the loss to the Cardinals, they turned that whole thing around, and you got to point to the leadership, and I think that's Kyle Shanahan.
Well said, my friend.
I know you've got to run.
Yep.
I want to say thank you very much for coming on. What do you got? Are you going to be doing anything on your channel this week, or are you too busy?
Yeah, I might just jump on and do quick snippets here and there, but nothing guaranteed. I am headed to the airport, and I'm going to be doing Jesse's show from the airport right now at around 6:30. So,
Fantastic.
Yeah, man. Still trying to be out here. Yeah, absolutely. It should be fun, especially with the way Jesse, because he's not as even keel as we are about what's going on right now. So it should be fun.
I love Jesse. That's part of he and I get into it sometimes, but he's a good dude. And I want to say thank you for making the time, because I know you got to run. Thanks to everybody over in the comment section. Raphael5629 says, great show, Jack and Suniel. Do me a favor before you head out, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell notification so you know when we go live, and then get yourself over to Suniel's channel, So Real Sports Talk TV, and do the same over there as well, everybody. Go get on that plane. Don't miss it. We don't want to hear about you missing the plane and having to we don't want to see a meme of you looking in the window because the plane left without you, like what we saw last year after the 49ers loss in Tennessee. So get to the airport, right. Suniel. Take care, guys.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.